Hey everyone, and welcome to episode 41 of the Hazy Sports Podcast. Charlie, the NHL season is finally wrapped up. Canes win their second cup. We're going to get into all of that. But first, how's your week going?
Really good. Vacation this week. Lots of good things happening. Really great week all around. But I wanted to ask you, I don't know if you caught any of the Knicks celebration parade or any of the highlights.
I've caught bits and pieces of it, but not too much of it, no.
So I'm just curious, like, what would it take for you to get down to go to one of those things? Because some of the shit that was happening, like, did you see the lady that was climbing the friggin' traffic lights? She's in a mid-fight while crawling up a light stanchion. Someone's pulling her pants down and she starts twerking while another lady's driving her in the side of the head. Then you got somebody else saving somebody with CPR. It just seems like the worst possible thing to ever be at.
Yeah, when I see that, I'm like, that's my nightmare, honestly. Like, I don't know if it's just as I get older, I look at those things and instead of thinking of the fun right away, my brain automatically starts thinking about, oh, getting in, getting out, it's going to be a pain in the ass. Where am I going to be able to take a piss when I need to go to the washroom? I'm not a huge fan of super crowded situations like that anymore.
That's the thing. Like, I guess everybody just decides they can't work that day. It was insane. Like, you remember the Raptors one? That was nuts.
Yeah.
And obviously New York's bigger than Toronto, and I just couldn't imagine, like, let's say you had to work downtown, you're gonna fight your way through a couple 100,000 people
Oh,
just to
man.
get to the office. Like, I don't know. It's like you just said, it's well past my threshold for tolerance, that's for sure.
Even when we were younger, when we'd go to those big festivals, I never really felt like my thing. Like, I loved seeing those bands, but I just never felt completely in my element in those like super packed where you're all squished in with people type places.
I don't even like going to the Santa Claus parade here in town. I couldn't imagine another thing with more than, 10,000 people. There's no way.
Yeah. On the sports front, Charlie, we had that big UFC White House card last Sunday, and I didn't get to watch the whole thing, but from what the highlights I saw, it did look like quite the spectacle, having the entrance through the Oval Office and everything that going along with that. But what were your thoughts on that event?
So I didn't know what the setup was going to be. So when the first fight started, I was like, are they taking him through the fucking Oval Office? And sure as shit, the Secret Service people meet up with them and they get this big escort. It seemed like they were walking about 3 kilometers just to get to the friggin' ring. Down like the Hall of Presidents, you see all the portraits and that. And I'm like, all right, like, it was cool the first time, but when we got to the main event, I'm like, holy Christ, can you just get there? But yeah, it was an amazing card. 8 finishes, like every fight had a finish. They were all pretty entertaining fights, couple big upsets. I don't know if you saw the Sean O'Malley knockout, but it might have been the coldest walk-off ever. He just cranked the guy with the right, and as he's falling, O'Malley stands straight up and gives the crowd a salute. Like, just, you couldn't script it any better. And then, of course, Gaethje gets the biggest upset of the night, not only defeating him, but making Ilia Topuria quit on the stool. That guy's face was unrecognizable. It was pretty awesome to see. I love Gaethje, so I was glad he got his belt finally.
It sounds like a pretty cool spectacle and gets us primed up for Conor McGregor's return here in a couple weeks.
Yeah.
But on that note, one thing we were talking about was our fictional showdown about which historical figures would make a good matchup if you put them in the octagon. And you were kind of in the corner of Teddy Roosevelt, and I was saying I'd have my money on Lincoln, but kind of half kidding around just because he's so tall and rangy. I actually looked into it a little bit more and I just searched, could Lincoln fight? Turns out I had no idea, but he's actually in the Wrestling Hall of Fame. Apparently he was like this, like almost
class?
I don't think they had weight classes back then, but apparently from what I was reading, like 6'4" back in the 1860s was like almost unheard of. So he had
true.
that, and he was a rail splitter on the frontier. you know,
That's what
I don't know
Mary
if I
called
don't
him.
know if you've ever shook hands with a rail splitter, but man, the grip these guys got, you can imagine if they latch onto you, you get some real functional strength that you build splitting rails.
The old grip strength. I think that's what Mary called him there, the old rail splitter.
So obviously these things weren't documented as well back in the 1800s, but apparently he had a 301 wrestling record. And he's
What?
actually, look it up. Yeah, I mean, the internet couldn't possibly lie about this. So, but he is
He was
actually in the Wrestling Hall of Fame.
That's crazy. I think he was also a vampire hunter too. I think there's a movie about that. Yeah, I want to throw another name into the ring because Gerald Ford was quite the athlete too, right? With his college football. And you got to figure somebody that athletic could probably has a wrestling base as well. But
Yeah, I think a good undercard would be Gerald Ford and George Washington, because then George Washington, you know, he fought in some wars. I feels like being president back in the day required, you know, a little bit more of a physical prowess.
I think you're right. I think it was a little bit more of a manly man's position now. Like, I'm pretty sure I could dust Mark Carney in about 2 minutes.
Yeah, there's no physical prowess there, but I was reading about Teddy Roosevelt. You're right. He was like hardcore into boxing. He would spar with guests at the White House. He had a boxing ring set up right in the White House, and
Do you
apparently
think he got a couple drinks in him and then just started challenging whoever showed up?
that must have been quite a wild scene when you went for your White House visit back then. But apparently he actually went blind in one eye from a boxing injury at one point. So then he switched to jiu-jitsu and like literally became this sort of mixed martial arts guy, but took a lot of pride in his physical stamina and toughness. So yeah, I think Lincoln Roosevelt as the main event and
Yeah.
Ford Washington as the undercard. That would be pretty solid.
I'm going to do some more research into this because I think we can build a whole main card at least.
And apparently Lincoln is even credited with inventing catch as catch can wrestling, which I had heard that term before, but I didn't know it had anything to do with wrestling. And it does sound like something Lincoln would invent, something that had that many words in it.
I guess when you think about it too, it's not like there was probably a lot of responsibility. I mean, you're the president, there's lots of things to do, but I'm sure they probably had a little more free time. So I'm going to look into this. I'm actually pretty interested in this Lincoln wrestling thing.
I was fascinated. It's an interesting journey that he went on before he became president. But let's fast forward a few hundred years here, Charlie, because what we've got going on right now is World Cup action. We won't go super deep into it, but wanted to acknowledge a big win for Canada yesterday against Qatar, 6-0. And looking pretty good to get out of the group stage at this point.
Just an absolute shit stomping. That was awesome. And the biggest thing too now is they hold the goal differential over the Swiss. So even a draw in that final game, and they're the one seed coming out of that group. So barring a miracle, like I think Bosnia would have to beat Qatar by like 8, and we would have to lose to be eliminated. All signs are pointing to Canada moving on. It's pretty incredible.
It's a fun run, and you can feel the country kind of getting behind that team. On a bit more of a sobering note, though, within the euphoria of that victory was quite a devastating injury there to Koné. And watching that, you could hear that leg break. And I think for me, the most chilling moment of all that was when it showed the close-up of his face, and in like a 2-second period, he went from a range of shit, I'm hurt, and then you see him look at his leg, and you see just this moment where he looks at it, and there's like this element of disbelief of what shape his leg is in, and then all of a sudden the agony sets in, and I just thought, man, that is haunting when you just see the facial expression from somebody realizing they're hurt to realizing how bad they're hurt to then the emotional disappointment of everything. And also to see the way the players react. Like, the players are used to other guys getting injured, but when you see an injury that devastating, you could almost feel the emotion of the whole stadium changed from that point on.
Yeah, it was dead silent, and thankfully they didn't keep showing the replay too, because I was like, I don't know, I hate when they do that when it's even a mild injury. So the fact that they didn't keep showing it, thankfully, I was pretty happy about that. Yeah, that's a big loss, and the nice thing was it didn't kill the Canadian momentum. Like, they knew they had to get a bunch of goals that game to put themselves in the position they're in. So I was a little worried that that was going to take a little bit of wind out of the sails, but they managed to keep going. And it's too bad because that guy's a pretty key player for the team, but we'll have to find somebody else.
We'll be excited to watch that game against Switzerland. I think that'll be a true test to see where the Canadians are at in level of quality, but things looking good so far. I would say the most entertaining all-around game that I've watched so far was the England-Croatia game.
That's probably one of the best soccer games I've watched in the last few years. Like, so England gets the penalty right away, which is obviously changes the way both teams have to play after that. And I was expecting, because this is what we always see, England to go into this, super cautious, let's just defend, because that's been their MO for the last, I don't know, as long as I've remembered. But instead of that, they just kept the foot on the gas. Like, they could have scored 7 or 8 goals in this game if it wasn't for the Croatian goalkeeper.
So that start of that second half, they were really pouring it on. But yeah, it was a fun game, and there's so many matches that have been played. We can't go into all of them, but I thought the Canada and England game were two that were worth touching on.
Yeah, it's been great. And last week, I'm pretty sure I compared the England team to the Leafs, but I'm going to backtrack on that and say the England team reminds me more of the Buffalo Bills, where they have the talent and they have the star power, but for some reason they just can't get over the hump. But it seemed like old Thomas Tuchel's got a different philosophy here. And if they play like that, I think they have at least a chance to get to the semis for sure.
Yeah, it'll be exciting to watch how that unfolds. I would say the only thing I struggle with, and I get it, it's soccer, it's part of the culture, but the constant diving, and maybe it's more the contrast of just coming from watching the Warriors in the NHL playoffs and the stuff that they're battling through, blocking shots and all these injuries, that it feels more striking with the way these guys go down. And I get it. So it's part of the soccer culture, so I'm not trying to make a big thing about it, but it is hard. It's the one thing that I just keep getting stuck on. And it's one thing if you want to sell a call a little bit, but the commitment to these injuries, the 10 spins or rolls on the ground and staying down for 5 minutes and screaming and yelling.
There's a couple classic Neymar clips where he does like 4 or 5 somersaults after barely being tapped on the foot. And I'm the same. I can't handle it either. And there's such an easy way to fix this. Like, if you're down for more than 10 seconds, you got to go off, right?
Yeah,
you need to be subbed out. I think that would kill that so fast.
Yeah, I like that idea. But overall, it's not really like taking away too much from the experience. I think it's just, like I said, something that really jumps off the screen after you watch the NHL playoffs. But yeah, we're just getting rolling on World Cup, so it'll be a fun ride over the next few weeks to see how things go. But Charlie, let's get to the NHL, talk a little hockey. I remember when I was on my honeymoon in Sicily back in October, game 1 of the regular season. Here we are midway through June. It finally wraps up. It's been a great run, but it's kind of nice to put a bow on this NHL season. Canes get the job done in 6. What are your overall takeaways from this series?
Well, it started off as probably one of the most exciting finals, and then by the end there was such a divide on who was the better team. It was pretty obvious by game 5 and 6, and you just got to tip your hat to this Carolina team because they stayed with what they knew, and kind of a tip of the cap to Brind'Amour too, making the goalie change. Like, that's such a ballsy call, because if they lose that game 6, right, now you've kind of alienated your starter, and then what do you do, right? Like, it really could have gone sideways, but the fact that he had the nuts to make that call and then Bussy actually comes through, I thought that was pretty pretty solid coaching.
I agree, because not an easy decision when you've been riding Anderson all that way, but I honestly think Vegas seemed to have Anderson figured out a little bit, or they had a lot more confidence shooting on him, and then
Yeah.
Bussy just sort of changed the dynamic a little bit that they never could figure it out. Part of it too looked like Vegas just kind of ran out of steam, battling through that many long, hard series, that many overtimes, and compared with Carolina, who had a few sweeps, only lost one game up until that point. I think that paid dividends here towards the end of this series, where they just seem fresher. They seem more energized. They seem like they could have played another 5 or 6 games at this level. And a testament to that roster construction where, I think their top 6 defensemen were almost trading spots and who was getting the most ice time. So just to kind of show the way that the workload was so evenly distributed across that Hurricanes team versus maybe Vegas having to put a little bit more on the shoulders of some of their key players.
And up until the finals, I don't think Carolina had a real physical test either. So maybe a little less wear and tear on their team. But here's a really scary thought moving forward if you're a fan of an Eastern Conference team. So they win the championship, right? So now we're heading into free agency. They still have $15 million in cap space, and that's before it gets the jump. So it's probably more around 16. They only have one guy that they need to sign. Everybody else on this team is locked up, and your big performers in the playoffs, your Taylor Hall and your Logan Stankoven, those guys are locked up for like the next 6 years. Jackson Blake's locked up, and all these deals are team-friendly deals. And the craziest part, they have 4 first-rounders in the next 3 drafts.
Yeah, it's crazy. And like you talked about the team-friendly deals, I think Blake's on like $5 million a year. I think
It's nothing, yeah.
Stankoven's like on a very good contract as well. But yeah, you mentioned Brind'Amour, great job coaching. Obviously, there's not too many coaches where their personality is so clearly part of the DNA of the team and the way they play. So yeah, kudos to Rod. But you also got to give props to their GM constructing this roster. Taking a chance on Rantanen, and then that doesn't work out 16 games into it or whatever it was, flipping him for Stankoven and draft picks that ultimately landed them Keandre Miller. Great when you get that combination of GM and coach that work so well together. That's a scary situation for the Eastern Conference for the next few years.
It's crazy. And their one farm team also won the championship. There's so much talent up and down this roster. And two last points on this. Their GM actually has a PhD in chemistry, so I don't know if that means anything from Berkeley University. And Rod Brind'Amour, I don't know if you saw the clip of him ripping his shirt off and lifting the cup. Like, that guy is absolutely shredded still, and I wouldn't be surprised if he could make a bottom 6 in the league right now.
Yeah, I knew he was in good shape, but until that shirt came off, I was like, wow, he's like still sub 10% body fat. You're right. He looks like he could jump into the lineup.
Absolutely. Yeah, I talked a lot of smack about the Hurricanes, but at the end of the day, they're clearly the best team in the league. And one other guy I wanted to mention last week, it was actually in my report card, but I missed it, was Shane Gostisbehere. Like, that guy is just an absolute joy to watch run a power play. Like, he's obviously not a defensive defenseman at all, but just the way he laterally moves and stuff like that, that's what I want Evan Bouchard to do. Just keep it simple and just make the right play. I really enjoyed watching that guy play.
Another guy the Red Wings let go along with Jake Wallman. I was happy for him, but can't help but think, yeah, wouldn't mind having him in a Red Wings jersey still, the way he's playing. And then just to round things out with Vegas, obviously a pretty good run for them. They went down, put up a good match against a buzzsaw in the Hurricanes, but a little surprised they're not bringing Torts back after a pretty good winning record, taking them all the way to the Cup Finals.
Yeah, I mean, I love the guy. Just the sound bites alone, I hope he gets a job. But like you said, it was pretty much cut and dry before he even came in that this is what you're here for. Now, it would have been interesting if they would have won. What would have happened if he would have maybe got another year or something like that? But yeah, it's pretty clear what the plan is there. So it sucks to lose the guy, but I hope he finds work somewhere.
I think it goes to show how toxic things must have been getting with Cassidy. Because obviously, Torch walked into a pretty good situation with a lot of high quality veteran players that knew what they're doing. So clearly, Cassidy had lost the room, and they just needed a strong presence, confident presence to sort of change up the energy and guide them through. But maybe you think in terms of the full season, maybe Torts isn't the guy to kind of like develop the system, develop the culture. But when it comes to just sort of stepping in and I think probably the biggest thing Torts did was just and one of the biggest jobs when you get to playoff time is these coaches that are just masters at manipulating the media and those press conferences and knowing how to like give credit to guys in public that need it, give them a vote of confidence or shift the direction of the narrative in the right way. And I thought that's where he really shined through this playoff series is just managing all of the media questions and all those responsibilities that the team has so that the players can just sort of focus on playing their game.
I 100% agree, and that's he is the master at that, right? Like he's not going to take any stupid questions, and he's not going to allow his players to get thrown under the bus. I hope he gets a job somewhere. But the problem with Vegas now is the cap crunch is finally catching up to them. Like they have so many RFAs and no money. Like that's going to be a completely different team next year unless they somehow figure out a way to, rework some of these deals. They're really in bad shape. So the new guy's going to have his work cut out.
Well, Charlie, we're less than a week into the off season here officially, but Vegas already has sort of futures odds for next year's Cup favorites, and looks like the Canes are there at the top, plus 600. Any other odds jumping out off the page, either for good value or you're a little shocked by?
So I always look to see where my team is, and for some reason they have the fourth best odds to win the Cup, which makes absolutely no sense. I mean, I guess it's kind of like the NFL where they always sort of inflate the Dallas Cowboys odds because there's so many idiots that will throw a bit of money on it. Like how Edmonton's even in the top 10, I don't know. They don't have a coach. They don't have any goalies. One of their defensemen wants to get out of the city. They have very little money to improve the team. I think this is, if you're betting on this, then you should be hitting that I'm not fit to play button.
And their Norris Trophy candidate defenseman, we don't know how many brain cells he's going to have left after that hit he took in the World Championships, but yeah, definitely. I think Edmonton's one of those teams that gets a lot of public money on them. So Vegas knows people just want to bet on the Oilers and McDavid, so they inflate those. But what about some dark horses? Anything you're seeing on the value side, if anybody wants to sprinkle a little cash down early?
I love the Habs and the Sabres at 27-1. Like, I think those teams are only going to get better, right? Especially Montreal with the amount of money they have and the amount of talent. They could easily bring in a Dylan Larkin or somebody and really solidify that team. But those were two that jumped out to me for sure.
And I think the Eastern Conference is going to be a bit of a meat grinder again, like it was this year, where there's going to be so many teams so bunched up close. Like, because the other team, I was wondering, I didn't get a chance to look at the odds, but the Panthers with Barkov, a healthy Barkov back and a healthy Tkachuk to start the season, I got to think they're going to be right there, so at the top of the list as well.
They actually had the third best odds. I think they were 9-1, but that's still a pretty good bet on a team that obviously knows how to win.
Always fun to take a look at those early odds, but we got a lot of time to think about that over the off season. Let's talk about some teams that have been making some moves here in the off season, and I guess we start with the Leafs. The Chaika Sundin era continues to evolve with three moves. Where do you want to start out of those three?
So the first deal comes down and I'm like, okay, I get moving on from Wall. You have these goalies in the AHL that are, reasonably effective. They're on the verge of winning a Calder Cup down there. Maybe one of those guys takes the next step. But I didn't really get throwing Simone Benoit into that trade, because I thought he was one of their best defensemen. Now maybe it's a money crunch somewhere down the line or whatever, but I thought that was weird to swap out him for a 5'9", 180-pound defenseman coming back in. That one seemed puzzling to me, and then a goalie that's not good enough to play in the NHL coming back with Urson from the Flyers. That one puzzled me. And then we get to the coach, and I didn't even know that guy was on anybody's radar after the way he kind of shit the bed in LA.
Yeah, I was a little surprised too. And, you hear about these exhaustive interview process that they're going through, and it makes you wonder whether some of these guys didn't want the job. I don't really know what to think of it. When Berube got hired there, I thought that was a great hire. It turned out not to work out that well. So maybe these ones that you don't think are going to be that great turn out pretty well. I think you got to give a little time one way or the other. He's definitely not a name where it gets buzz and excitement going. Like I'm wondering to what Steve Simmons is just ready to burst a gasket at that first press conference. But
my whole thing though, and I mean, I saw Hiller play, with the Kings and Edmonton just rip them apart for so many years. But I mean, he's been in the job for 2 days. And if you think about it, they just added probably the best puck moving power play defenseman with Darren Raddysh today, which I think is a great move. I don't love 8 years, but I think that's what you got to do, because I think at this point, someone's going to give the guy the extra years, right? And then you also are probably going to add Gavin McKenna. So if you're Austin Matthews right now, who's Mr. I want to win, I don't know if I'm going to stay here. Well, there's 2 fantastic pieces, and Hiller is a power play specialist, and I don't know, maybe you're right, maybe it is a good fit.
Yeah, I don't know. I guess I'm trying not to be let's just immediately jump on that as a shit move until we give it a little time.
Yeah.
But, I'm a little surprised. I guess if I'm coming from a glass half full perspective, I do look at that King series with the Oilers last year, where they were a bad challenge call away from winning that series, and then who knows what happens there. They are not the most exciting brand of hockey to watch. In fact, I think the Kings might have been the most boring team to watch in the style that they play. So I kind of hope, just for the sake of Leafs fans and watching Leafs games, that he doesn't necessarily bring that much of a defensive system to the Leafs. But yeah, hey, we'll give it a chance, see where it goes, and I won't jump too harshly on this decision until he's had a chance to do something.
Yeah, I mean, Leaf Nation, they're pretty stable. They'll give this guy a good look.
Yeah,
but I love the Raddysh thing. Like, I love bringing in Raddysh, because that's what that team needs. And now if you can somehow get off of Morgan Rielly, you've upgraded your power play D-man 1, and with a better player, making less money. If you can dump Rielly now, I think you're in pretty good shape. And we'll give it a go. I don't expect much from the Leafs, but we'll see.
But I like that move too. There's something I really like about bringing a guy in from a winning culture that's played in a good system, that's played in a lot of hard-fought battles, brings a little toughness, brings a little leadership, and comes from that winning culture. I think those are the dominoes that will help sort of change this thing around. And again, like, the Leafs had a terrible season, but when you look at their personnel, I still don't feel like they're that far away from a bounce back year of being right back in it. Who knows how quickly McKenna will get up to speed, but I'm not even a Leafs fan, but I kind of got the optimism that I can see a bounce back year from him. I feel like everything that could go wrong last year did go wrong, so it can only kind of go up from here.
And if you've been paying attention to the AHL, like, Easton Cowan is looking like a dog out there. Like, I love this kid when he played in London. Like, it was just a nonstop motor, and doing these deep playoff runs in the AHL is only going to help when you get later in the season. I think he's going to have a great year, and I think Raddysh is going to be I don't know. Everyone's talking about he hasn't done this, consistently, but I bet you he easily puts up 60 points next year.
Yeah, well, let's shift over to your Oilers. We've talked about the Leafs making a new coaching hire. I don't think the Oilers have made any coaching hires, but their guy Babcock has been cleared and is available to be hired. So it sounds like the writing's on the wall there. And the interesting thing I'm hearing is that actually McDavid seems to be pushing for this move. So I don't know. What are you hearing in Oiler country?
I heard it's going to be done as of early next week. Like, it's from what I was reading today, he's already sort of having discussions with Bowman about player personnel and stuff. I'm kind of, I don't know, I'm sort of coming around on this now because I think the last two guys they had were way too soft on inconsistencies and stuff like that. And I'm kind of wondering if that sort of mental thing has shifted way too far to the player side where you can't criticize, almost that it needs to come back to this is what we got to do, this is how we win. I don't care about your feelings. Like, piece of shit stuff that he's done aside, right? You can't shake that off, but I think a level of consistency will help this team dramatically.
Yeah, I agree, and that's a good way of looking at it. Like, they kind of need the opposite of what they had before in terms of a bit of a disciplinarian, a bit of a firm voice, and a guy that's going to really lead in a strong way. The other thing I was thinking, like, the microscope that Babcock's been under through all of this, you got to think maybe he's evolved as a person a little bit since that last stint. You know, he's still probably going to be a bit of a hard coach to play for. But you go through an investigation. Yeah, that's
That's what
okay.
you need.
You just don't need this guy that's, you don't want an evil sort of person, trying to destroy careers and stuff and playing those cards. But I think he's probably learned from some of his past mistakes of sort of maybe places he's crossed the line. I think the media, everybody's going to be paying a lot more attention to how he interacts with the players. So he's probably not going to be able to get away with some of the stuff that he used to do. And so maybe it'll be that perfect balance where he's still that, tough coach. Obviously, he's had a lot of success winning cups in Detroit, winning gold medals with Team Canada. So he knows how to coach. He knows how to win. And so if he can find a little bit more of that balance in how he interacts with the players. So, hey, if nothing else, it'll be entertaining podcast content for us.
And I think it's going to be a test of the, not only McDavid, but the rest of that leadership group in there. Like, you're going to have to call them out if there's any bullshit that they don't like. But I don't love it because it does still kind of seem desperate to me. But I don't know when asking for responsibility as a player became such a bad thing, but I think this will help this team ultimately.
Yeah, and all of a sudden, the Mike Babcock coaching tree has had quite a resurgence this week between him and his old power play guy, Hiller, getting some key jobs there. So, yeah, will be interesting to follow that in oil country. Any other off-ice stuff you want to talk about before we get into the draft preview?
Just another quick kind of sneaky move by the Sharks, picking up Kesselring from the Sabres. I thought that was a great move. He's probably not a top 4 defenseman, but he's a good bottom 2 defenseman, and he's still young. So, if you can get a puck mover and stuff like that, I thought that was good for pretty much nothing, right? Low risk.
Yeah, exactly. Once you've got those studs in the key roles on the team, and then it becomes about finding good value to fill in those reliable depth guys. Those are the little moves that maybe seem to go under the radar a bit for teams like this, but once they get into the playoffs, pay off big time. Cool. Well, we'll continue to monitor. I think free agency starts officially July 1st, so we may have some more interesting moves to talk about. We'll definitely keep an eye on the Larkin situation and see how that plays out. But Charlie, what I'm actually most interested in, even before that, is this upcoming draft. It's in Buffalo, KeyBank Center next Friday. I can't remember an NHL draft that I've been more intrigued for this year for a couple of reasons. I think starting with that number 1 pick, you kind of got a bit of a coin flip situation between McKenna and Stenberg. All reports are that the Leafs have pretty much decided on McKenna, so I don't think that'll be a huge surprise, but always interesting when you don't have sort of that completely clear cut who the number 1 guy is. But where it really gets interesting is the Sharks at that number 2 pick. And there's so many things that could happen here that could change the trajectory of the draft. Obviously, if the Sharks draft for need, they're going to take a defenseman, and Chase Reed seems like the number one guy on most people's boards from a D-man standpoint. If they do that, then you got Vancouver with the number 3 pick. They've got Manny Malhotra as their head coach. They need a center desperately. Caleb Malhotra, the top center on the board. Seems like that's a foregone conclusion that they take him in the number 3 spot. All of a sudden, you got Stenberg, who is potentially a coin flip for the number 1 pick, falls all the way to the Blackhawks at number 4, and a potential running mate with Bedard, which could be a match made in heaven, and probably couldn't work out much better for the Blackhawks if things fell in that direction.
Yeah, it's funny you said that, because I was actually flipping through and I was reading a couple of mock drafts, and a lot of people have Stenberg ending up in Chicago, which makes sense if these other dominoes fall. But I'm going to make a bold prediction that the Sharks will not be drafting the 2nd overall pick. I think that's getting moved somewhere, whether it's for a Dylan Larkin or something like that. I think they're going to be wheeling and dealing.
Yeah, I think that's a good prediction too, especially considering their need is defense. And there's like 6 top-notch defensemen in this draft that you can get in the top 10. So it is a pretty deep D draft. So how do you not look at opportunities to trade down and maybe still get a number 1 franchise type defenseman, and so yeah, a lot can change at that number 2 pick. If they draft a player and go D, that creates an interesting chain reaction. If they happen to take trade offers, which it sounds likely they'll do, then it really comes down to who they trade with, who's moving up to get that pick, where what's involved in that. That could just put the whole draft order into a blender. But what's interesting to me too is like through basically the top 10, maybe not every guy's automatic franchise guy, but I would say the top 8 guys anyways are pretty automatic, long-term, high-level NHL potential stars. And
I have a bad feeling that Florida's going to somehow end up with that Albert Smits, who's just an absolute like perfect player for those guys, like hard forechecking, defense first with a scoring touch, and it'll just be more chaos on that Florida team.
And the other guy I was kind of intrigued to see is this Keaton Verhoff, a guy that has a pretty high ceiling in terms of where he could potentially go. At one point, there was a while there where he was slated as sort of the automatic number 2 guy in the draft. He's fallen off a little bit, but if he drops down to like the Flames at number 6 or Seattle at number 7, that could turn out to be quite a steal as well.
Yeah, you're right. It's probably one of the more interesting drafts in the last few years.
It's unpredictable in terms of what could happen there, and that's what makes a fun draft. So yeah, we'll look forward to that, and then on our next episode we can do a little bit of a draft recap. But Charlie, we're here. Time for our weekly trivia. I think I got a good one for you here.
All right, let's hear it.
It's another one where we're taking Wayne Gretzky out of the mix and then say who the next guy is. And we know the 80s were sort of a classic era for point totals and some high scoring performances. So my question to you is, who had the most regular season points in the decade of the 80s after Gretzky? It's another interesting question because there's 3 or 4 guys that are right in the mix, but I'll leave you to think about that one, and we'll come back to it in the outro.
Okay, I think I have a good guess on this, but we'll give the listeners some time.
Okay, well, let's switch it up and kick things off with our weekly report card. Why don't you get us started here?
All right out of the gate, I got an A for Blue Jays outfielder George Springer. I just hit his 300th home run this past week. I don't think anybody has more fun playing baseball. Like, he's always got a smile on his face, and he's just been a great addition ever since he joined the team, and I hope that he can stay healthy as they kind of ramp up here and get on a bit of a roll. So an A for George.
Nice. I've got an A for Hockey Night in Canada and an F for the fact that it will no longer be broadcast, at least not with NHL hockey. Yeah, kind of a sad day. for Canadian culture. The CBC has been broadcasting Hockey Night in Canada for over 70 years, either in radio form or the television broadcast. And Hockey Night in Canada is just something that's so intrinsically connected to Canadian culture that it's a shame we couldn't have found a way to keep that going. But unfortunately, Sportsnet has not found a way to do that. If you were looking for other reasons to not like Rogers as the company, here's another one. I know it's kind of a business thing and it's the way she goes, but to me that was just such a special tradition. And when you have these things that go back 60, 70 years that bring people together, that create that nostalgic things that are such uniquely Canadian experiences, it kind of sucks to lose it. So yeah, I want to just say A for the run of Hockey Night in Canada, and an F for the fact that we won't be doing it anymore.
Well said. All right, I got an A+ for England striker Harry Kane. 2 goals in the first game, was absolutely spraying the ball all over with these like precision passes. Guy's underrated passer, but also 2 huge blocks in the box with his chest, like a full-on strike, just laying it out. And the guy just does everything. And the best analogy I can do is this guy's like Barkov for the England team. Like he's a good defender, he's a great passer, and he can put the ball in the net. So an A+ for Harry Kane.
I've got an A for Zlatan Ibrahimovic. So I don't know if you've seen much of the Fox broadcasts around the World Cup, but they have him on with Alexi Lawless and Thierry Henry. And Ibro and Henry, you can just tell they despise Alexi Lawless, and they're not even making an effort to concede to him on any level. Lawless is trying to come at it with more of a first take, sort of hot take impression. There was one clip in particular where Lawless was talking about France being cocky or arrogant, and Ibro said, it's not arrogance, it's confidence, and only stupid people would think it was arrogance. There's already about 4 or 5 examples where Ibro just shuts him down.
I wouldn't be surprised if those two throw down before the end of the tournament. Like, you can feel the hatred as you're watching it. All right, I got another A for Matt Kiatipis, aka MK. I am so hooked on these videos. I don't know if you know this guy, but he's a Canadian basketball player that has turned the street ball one-on-one thing into like this viral clips that he makes where he's just like, he'll go anywhere in the world and play people one-on-one, but it's like ultra aggressive, ultra shit talking one-on-one games to 5. And the guy's hilarious. He's absolutely like a all-out baller. Like, it's pretty rare that he loses, and just the shit talking and how well he does these videos, I get absolutely roped in. So big A+ for MK.
I've got a D for multinationality sports qualifications. I don't know if I'm saying that right, but what I hate is, you're seeing it in the World Cup where guys are born in one country, but they have parents from another country, or they've got citizenship in multiple countries. And then they start picking and choosing which country they're going to play for. They do it in hockey as well, but I just noticed it more in World Cup. For me, whatever country you're born in, unless you move to another country when you're like under the age of 10 or something like that, that's the country you're playing with. None of this like my great grandpa was from Germany, so I'm going to play in Germany or whatever. I hate that. So an F for multinational players in the World Cup and other sports.
I agree with you. Sticking with the World Cup, I have an A+ for the World Cup camera people. Their ability to find the most stunning women in these crowds game after game is just unparalleled. And I know that's kind of a, stupid thing to say because obviously everyone can see them, but you get these shots after the game and people are always like, who doesn't love the World Cup? And here's this, absolute beauty from Colombia. And then the next day there's 3 German girls lining up there, and it's like, even if you don't love soccer, you gotta love these World Cup cameramen doing the work for everybody.
And then when all the camera guys are out for beers after the game, they're probably giving each other props for that more than any of the stuff they're doing in the game. And maybe the camera guys are almost like have like an Elliot Friedman situation where they've got people in the stands that are saying, hey, section, 31D, we've got a live one in row 10.
They must have spotters because the consistency that these guys hit with is unbelievable.
All right, I've got a C for Conor McGregor trash talking. Now, this guy was at the top of the game in the UFC, and when he was at the top of his game, his trash talking was like none other. But more recently, I've heard him trying to get back to that level of trash talking with his Max Holloway fight, and I can't help but find it a little bit sad. He's clearly shades of his former self in terms of his ability. I mean, we'll see, but it comes across as a guy that's struggling to get back to where he was physically, and also struggling to portray that persona that he had, which you can only do that when you're the best of the best and you can back this shit up. And if you've been trash talking for your last 3 fights and you've got your leg broken and you've got choked out, I just can't take the trash talking and all that bravado in the same way. So when I heard, a little bit of a press conference with him and Max Holloway, and he's trying to go dip into his 2010 bag of insults, it just didn't resonate the same way. So C for McGregor's more recent trash talking.
It almost seems like he's trying to convince himself a little bit too.
I think so. Yeah, it's a little sad actually.
It is.
It just comes across as a bit pathetic.
It's like me trying to use the phrases that the kids use. There's something that they say, they keep saying clock it, and I made the mistake of saying click it.
Yeah,
that worked out good. I was super cool after that.
Yes.
All right, my last one. I have 2 groups of World Cup fans, another A. Starting off, I don't know if you saw the Congo statue fan.
I did, yeah.
The dedication to that bit, put aside that you probably paid $1,500 to get into the stadium, but then to stand there for the full match and not move, like that's unbelievable discipline.
It's amazing. I'm impressed by that. Sarah was helping organize this party last weekend, so I got roped into putting some decorations up. And I was putting these streamers up where I had my arms over my head for maybe like 45 seconds to a minute and a half at a time. And my shoulders are burning, my arms are shaking. This guy's standing there for 90 minutes with his arm raised in the exact same position. But yeah, so good stuff to him.
And then just to follow that up, the Japanese fans, I'm not sure if you saw this, but the Japan match ends and all the fans are then going row by row and picking up all the garbage. Like, it's just incredible, the amount of respect they have for the stadium and the other workers there. So I just, both those 2 fan bases, big A. It's kind of unique and cool to see.
And I did a little research on that statue fan guy. There's a statue of the very first democratically elected president in Congo who got assassinated like 3 weeks after he got into power. So he's kind of a national hero. And basically the statue pose that he's doing and the way he dresses, he's basically a tribute to that president. So it's actually kind of a cool, inspiring story behind it. But
was
also
that guy a good wrestler?
That I'm not sure how his catch can was, but anyway, so I'm going to round up the report card with a B- for Timothy Chalamet and the rest of the Knicks celebrity fans that we got overexposed to over the Knicks run. Now, I'll admit, when the Knicks were in this playoff run, there was something about seeing, the celebrities in that front row at MSG that kind of added to the mix. But when it got to the point where it crossed the threshold of being just kind of a cool atmosphere to seeing Taylor Swift and her 3 besties jumping around on the front row, I know Timothy Chalamet is like a legit Knicks fan, but do we need to see him at the parade and speaking on the microphone? I'm just a little fatigued with it. So that's why I'm giving it a B-. Nothing too harsh, but I thought it was cool at first, and then it kind of got a little bit much. Okay, Charlie, that wraps up the report card. Now we're on the home stretch here in the outro. We're back to our trivia question. We're talking 80s hockey, prime time for, big point totals. Obviously, Gretzky leading the way, over 1,800 points in the 80s himself, but a bunch of other guys that had many 100+ point seasons. Any guesses on who number 2 on that list would be?
So my guess here, and I only am guessing this because I'm pretty sure this player has the record for the most consecutive 90-point seasons, and that would be Dale Hawerchuk.
He is on the list, but he's not the guy.
Not the guy.
Any other guesses before I give you some hints?
So I automatically defer then to the guys that started like in actual 1980, because obviously they have more games. So I'm thinking maybe Peter Stastny.
Bingo. Nice job. So he played the full decade of the 80s with the Nordiques before he got traded to New Jersey, won the Calder Trophy in 1980, scored over 100 points in his first 6 years with the Nordiques. Kind of a crazy story. I mean, we talk about McGillney as being one of the first Russians to defect, and that was in the late 80s, early 90s. Stastny and his brother Anton defected from Czechoslovakia in 1980, so that must have been some real cloak and dagger shit going on, and probably trailblazers in that. They were soon joined by their brother Marian a year later. So Stastny finished with 1,059 points in the 80s, which was only about 20 points ahead of Curry. And then his teammate with the best duster around, Michel Goulet, in there. I feel like Curry and Goulet have been the bridesmaids of a lot of our trivia questions that we've had so far.
They definitely have. That was a good one.
But another interesting thing, just as I started going down the Peter Stastny rabbit hole, he actually played for Team Canada at the 1984 Canada Cup. So
really?
kind of the thing I was venting on before about the dual citizenship there. Yeah, he became a Canadian citizen and actually represented Team Canada in the 84 Canada Cup. And building on that, the first goal he scored for Team Canada was when they were playing against Czechoslovakia. So you got to think he was getting some pretty harsh death threats from the crowd at that point. But
that is crazy. I didn't know that at all. That's very interesting.
I don't know if Canada won that Canada Cup. It strikes me as one we don't hear about a lot, and as Canadians we only talk about the ones that we won. So maybe we didn't win in 84, but I was shocked actually to, think of Stastny in a Team Canada jersey, but I went and watched a couple highlights and sure enough he was.
Very interesting.
Yeah, so there you have it. Another trivia question. Wrapping things up for the week here, Charlie. We do have some big news that we can tease now, but I think on our next episode we'll have some more details to share, but just some pretty cool opportunities for us and for the podcast to grow. So we'll do a bit more of official announcement on that on the next episode. Draft coming up next Friday, as we talked about. So on the next episode, we'll be able to do a little bit of a breakdown on that. And then shortly after that, we have unrestricted free agency. So it's proving to be a pretty entertaining off season here so far.
Yeah, it's going to get busy. And then once free agency hits, we're not going away. We may take a couple weeks off, but we got a lot of cool stuff planned for the summer. So stick with us.
Yeah, we're due for another Wax Era legend. We've been tossing around the idea of Boreas Salming for our next guy, but hey, if any of the listeners have any guys that you'd like to see us profile from that era, we're always open to suggestions and anyone you think would make a good story. But we thought Borea would be a pretty cool one, a Leafs legend, one of those early guys to come over from Europe and do his thing. So we might dig into that a little bit more. Other than that, Charlie, we're recording on a Friday, which is a little bit of a change for us. What do you got on tap for the rest of the weekend?
Not a whole lot. We have, Father's Day Sunday, so I'm hoping I won't be doing anything that day. And then not a whole lot on the plate. What about yourself?
We're actually heading out of town. It's our anniversary this weekend, so hard to believe a year's went by already. We decided we just wanted to go somewhere just to kind of get away for a couple of days. We didn't really care where we did, so we do what I call the old Airbnb blender. Just put in a big radius and see what pops up. And so we're actually heading to Tilbury down by the Chatham area.
Yeah.
Never been there before, so I always like finding a place that we haven't really been. search out a few restaurants, local breweries, and things just to explore. And hey, as you head closer to Windsor, you get a little bit better value on the old Airbnbs compared to going to the GTA.
I have been to the Tilbury McDonald's, so I'd say at least 4 out of 5 there.
I've been looking for a dinner spot for the anniversary night, so I think I could really pull out all the stops for that one. But yeah, we got a place with a swimming pool, and it's right on the water. I'm not much of a fisherman, but they do have fishing poles there, so I thought maybe I could tell Sarah that I'll catch us dinner for the first night. Anyways, yeah, that sounds like a good weekend on both fronts. Enjoy your Father's Day. Let me ask you this: if you get a request that says, Charlie, you can have anything for breakfast or dinner or whatever for Father's Day, what's your go-to request?
I like a good burger maybe, or some wings. Honestly, we don't really do a whole lot. If I can just sit and watch the baseball game,
Have whatever we want for dinner. Just let me have a beer and watch the baseball game.
Exactly.
Well, sounds like a good plan. So we'll look forward to connecting with our big announcement on the next episode. Enjoy your weekend, and thanks everybody for listening.